seems to be dominating a lot of the papers today, isn't it?
Yes, let's start with the New York Times. They've actually tracked down the family of those 16 people who were killed, shot and stabbed on Sunday by a US soldier. They've tracked down the wife of the husband, of the woman killed, and father of the children, who says he just moved back to that very volatile area from Kandahar city because local authorities has ensured him that US forces there would protect his family. And now this happens. They point out the area has long been an insurgent stronghold. It's never been a place where the US troops were very popular. And now, of course, this massacre is an easy propaganda tool for the Taliban in that area. Even the family, even the people the correspondent speaks to, the family of the dead, don't believe that one soldier could have been responsible for this. They say they think it's a conspiracy by US forces, and what they want is for troops to pull out. So, of course, this massacre has sent the issue catapulting up the political agenda. And it's going to dominate talks today between British Prime Minister David Cameron, who's on a visit to Washington, and Barack Obama. Now, the Times, on their front page, has gone for allies look to speed up Afghan exit next year. Now, publicly, Cameron is saying he doesn't want to speed up the exit of British troops from Afghanistan. But the Times reckons this position is effectively just for show. It's an official position. But behind the scenes, he and Obama will mostly be talking about pulling out. That's not something necessarily that the Times agrees with. Its editorial says this massacre, while it's grotesque, isn't a reason to cut and run too soon from Afghanistan. They say we should remember we have a responsibility to the Afghan people. America and Britain, along with NATO partners, started this war, and we should remain at least until there is a democratic, consensual government that's stable in Afghanistan and that can take over. And that does not exist now, and we shouldn't pull out until there is, they say.
So the papers then seem to think that Afghanistan's going to be the main topic of those talks then today.
Yes, absolutely. The two leaders have jointly signed a letter to the Washington Post talking partly about Afghanistan, but also about the relationship between them. Of course, every time there is a bilateral Britain-US meeting, you do get these tons of press, don't you, written about whether or not this special relationship is really special. Does Obama care what little Britain has to think about anything? Well, of course, the Washington Post letter by the two leaders is designed to quell that kind of speculation by, evoking Churchill and saying we have a shared history and tradition and all this. Talk about collaborative foreign policy on things like Syria and Iran. But if we look at The Guardian, firstly, their cartoon implies NATO doesn't have a clue what it's doing anymore in Afghanistan. They've got this soldier sort of wandering around in the dark, and it's after a Goya painting, this, and the caption says, "A colossus in search of a role." And the paper's editorial says the relationship between Britain and America is like a bridge that's in need of repair. They say there's no point having bilateral meetings unless the two sides have things they can bring one another on foreign policy. And with the American president mostly concentrating on Asia and Cameron isolating himself in Europe, it doesn't seem clear what they can share with one another.
And the papers also seem to be thinking that Afghanistan is becoming a bit of an issue in the US presidential race.
Yes, the Washington Post says it's been surprisingly absent so far, but it came up yesterday when the mother of a serving soldier asked Romney when he was going to bring her daughter back home, and he used the opportunity to criticise President Obama, but he didn't actually say when he would pull troops out. Now, Obama is very vulnerable on this issue. It's kind of an Achilles heel because the state of Afghanistan makes it easy for Republicans to attack him from both angles, in fact. And Gingrich has been saying he thinks troops should have been pulled out ages ago, while Rick Santorum is saying Obama's made things easier for the Taliban by saying troops will eventually be pulled out, and he wants them to stay for longer. So the Republican candidates can't agree on this, but they're all finding it an easy angle to attack Obama.
And we've also got primaries today in Alabama and Mississippi. What are the papers saying about these contests?
Well, back to the Washington Post, which I've ransacked quite a bit today, they say that all the candidates are finding it hard to connect with voters in the Deep South because they're all based on the East Coast and they, despite having conservative beliefs, they don't share cultural values, they say. And in the same paper, back in the South, they say that Texas has had one of its voting laws scrapped by the federal government. Why? Because it required voters to bring photo ID to the polls, which means driving licenses or passports. Some poor Americans, especially ethnic minorities like Hispanics, don't necessarily have those papers. So there are still laws in place that require that in Virginia and South Carolina, and the paper says it hopes they get scrapped soon because the Republicans might not know it, but there are voters who don't have driving licenses or passports and they still have the right to vote.
Excellent stuff. Elena Casas there with a new feature on France 24, her review of the Washington Post. They obviously had all the best stories today. Elena, thanks very much. Let's remind you of the headlines then. News coming in that militants said to have opened fire on an